Her name was Victoria, a woman of faith, trying to hold herself together in a world that kept testing her strength. By day, she smiled through responsibility, routine, and disappointment. But at night, behind closed doors, she prayed for a different life, a softer life, a life where she no longer had to struggle just to breathe. Life had a way of wearing Victoria down, one long day at a time. And just when she thought the day couldn't get any worse, the car splashed through the puddle, soaking Victoria and the grocery bags in her hands. "Oh my gosh," the driver exclaimed as she quickly pulled over. "I am so sorry." Victoria looked down at her wet clothes and sighed softly, clearly exhausted from the day. "It's okay," she murmured. Trying to gather herself, the woman stepped closer, staring at her for a moment. "Victoria?" Victoria looked up in surprise. "Colleen? Oh my goodness. What a way for us to run into each other." The two women hadn't seen each other since high school, and life had clearly taken them down very different roads. "I'm really sorry," Colleen said gently. "Come on, let me give you a ride home and make it up to you." After a brief hesitation, Victoria nodded and accepted the offer. Victoria carefully stepped into the warm leather interior of Colleen's white Mercedes Benz S Class, instantly surrounded by comfort she wasn't used to. "Nice car," Victoria said softly, still trying to dry the rainwater from her sleeves. "Oh, thank you," Colleen laughed lightly. "My husband surprised me with it for my birthday last month." Victoria smiled politely. "Hmm, must be nice," she thought quietly to herself. As Colleen drove through the city, the two women caught up on life. Victoria spoke very little about herself beyond work and everyday responsibilities, but Colleen excitedly talked about vacations, shopping trips, fine dining, and the beautiful life she shared with her husband. Paris, weekend getaways, surprise gifts, a life that seemed effortless. Victoria listened quietly, not jealous, only wondering when life would finally become gentle with her too. Later that evening, after dinner and a long shower, Victoria found herself in the small bathroom she often escaped to when life became too heavy. Like many nights before, she bowed her head and began to pray. She thanked God for His goodness, for His protection, and for simply carrying her through another day. But beneath her gratitude was exhaustion. She could no longer ignore. Victoria was tired, tired of struggling, tired of barely getting by, tired of feeling like life kept passing her by while everyone else seemed to be living the very things she prayed for. "Lord," she whispered softly, holding back the tears, "I just need a break." More than anything, Victoria wanted to experience joy again, and not just a life of survival. Later that night, Victoria lay quietly in bed. Replaying the events of the day in her mind, she chuckled softly to herself as she thought about the splash from the passing car and how embarrassed she had felt standing there soaked in the street. Then her thoughts drifted back to Colleen, to her beautiful car, her marriage, her vacations, the soft life she seemed to be living. And strangely enough, Victoria wasn't jealous. She was genuinely happy to see someone she once knew living such a beautiful life. Still, deep down, Victoria quietly wondered when it would finally be her turn. With a soft sigh, she pulled the covers closer and closed her eyes. Tomorrow could come quickly, and work would be waiting for her all over again. As Victoria stared quietly into the darkness, she suddenly remembered something her grandmother used to tell her about the bamboo. Bamboo, how for years it would appear to barely grow at all. Beneath the surface, its roots are spreading, strengthening, preparing for what is to come. And then one day, all of a sudden, that hidden bamboo growth would suddenly rise. Her grandmother would always smile and say, "Never curse slow seasons, baby. Some things are growing underneath the surface." Victoria closed her eyes and held on strong to the words tightly. Maybe her life wasn't standing still after all. The next morning, Victoria buried herself in work, focused intensely on the project sitting in front of her. An emergency mandatory meeting had been announced for later that afternoon, but deadlines still had to be met, and Victoria was determined to prove herself. For years, she had worked faithfully at the company. She had trained new employees, helped build teams, stayed late when others rushed home, yet somehow the very people she once trained had moved ahead while she remained in the same position, waiting for someone to finally notice her hard work. Still, Victoria refused to complain. She simply sat at her desk and continued working tirelessly, hoping that maybe, just maybe, her turn was finally coming. Around lunchtime, Victoria made her way to the cafeteria, where Tracy was already waiting at their usual table. The two women had quietly built a routine over the years. Same lunch hour, same table, same conversations about office drama, deadlines, current events, and everyday life. Victoria didn't always have much to say about her personal life, but she genuinely enjoyed Tracy's company. There was something comforting about having someone to share a small part of the day with. Outside of work, the two women weren't especially close, though Tracy occasionally attended the same church as Victoria. Their friendship existed somewhere between coworkers and familiar souls. And for Victoria, that was enough. As Victoria and Tracy sat talking over lunch, another coworker suddenly approached their table, nearly glowing with excitement. Tamara occasionally joined them during lunch breaks. Through most days, she either worked through lunch at her desk or sat with other coworkers. "Girls, I have something to show you," she squealed excitedly, extending her hand proudly across the table. Sitting on her finger was one of the biggest diamonds Victoria had ever seen. Her boyfriend of a year had proposed over the weekend in front of both their families, close friends, and everyone she loved most. The woman could barely contain her happiness as she talked about the proposal, the surprise, the tears, and how perfect the moment had been. She was glowing, completely in love, Completely certain, completely happy, Victoria smiled warmly and celebrated the moment with her. But quietly, somewhere deep inside, she wondered what it must feel like to finally be chosen in that way. As lunch came to an end, Tracy and Victoria quickly gathered their things and hurried back upstairs for the mandatory meeting that had everyone talking throughout the office. The conference room was already buzzing when they entered. Project updates were reviewed, client accounts were discussed, deadlines, productivity goals, team performance, and upcoming contracts filled the conversation as employees quietly took notes around the table. Victoria listened attentively, occasionally contributing ideas while simultaneously trying to calm the nervous feeling growing inside her chest. For years, she had given everything she had to this company: long hours, late nights, training new employees, fixing mistakes that were never hers. Surely, she thought, eventually hard work had to mean something. Perhaps today would be the day. Then finally, near the end of the meeting, the project manager stood and smiled and cleared her throat. "And before we wrap up," she said, "I would like everyone to congratulate our new project manager." Victoria sat up slightly in her chair. And then she heard the name: Tiffany Johnson. The room immediately filled with applause and congratulations. Victoria smiled politely and joined in with everyone else, but inside, her heart quietly sank. Once again, she had been overlooked. Once again, someone else had moved ahead. And once again, all of her hard work seemed to go unnoticed. That evening, Victoria found herself walking home once again, alone with her thoughts. The long walk felt even heavier than usual as her mind replayed everything that had happened over the past few days. Colleen's beautiful life, Tiffany's promotion and raise, her co-worker's engagement and sparkling diamond ring, and then there was her, quiet, faithful, kind-hearted, doing her best to live honestly, love people genuinely, and remain faithful to the Lord, even when life felt unfair. Yet somehow it seemed as though everyone around her was moving forward, while she remained standing still, overlooked, forgotten, bypassed. For a brief moment, Victoria felt herself growing tired deep inside, tired of hoping, tired of waiting, tired of wondering when life would finally become softer for her too. But even in her discouragement, something inside her refused to completely give up. As she walked, a scripture her grandmother once taught her suddenly came back to her mind. God is within her. She will not fail. Victoria took a long, slow breath and continued walking. Then another scripture followed close behind. Do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Her grandmother used to repeat these words often whenever life became difficult. And somehow, on that long walk home, those words gave Victoria just enough strength to keep on going. So, she lifted her head, wiped away her tears, and made a quiet decision within herself. I'm going to keep pushing, she thought. She would keep doing what was right, and she would trust that one day her season would come too.